Good evening. I'd like to call to order tonight's regular board meeting of the ISD 191 Burnsville-Eagan-Savage School Board. The date is April 9th, 2020, and the time is 6:30 p.m. I'd like to start by welcoming folks that are joining us from home. We are all living in a teleconference age now, and so pleased that we're able to continue our work. With that, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Director Hallwiger, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will start tonight's meeting by approving the agenda. I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Director Schatz. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will let our audience know that because we are doing teleconferencing, all votes will be by roll call. Ms. Kenny, would you please start the roll call?
Dee Dee Courier.
Aye.
Scott Hume.
Aye.
Eric Miller.
Aye.
Abigail Alt.
Aye.
Jen Hallwiger.
Aye.
Leslie Chester.
Aye.
Darcy Schatz.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Thank you. Turning to the first item in the information portion of our meeting, we will start by receiving a report from Lisa Ryder, Executive Director of Business Services. We will receive a report on FY21 final budget adjustments. Welcome, Lisa.
Good evening. I am to give you a report regarding our adopted budget FY21 and our preparations to bring forward to the board in June a budget that is a total budget for adopted in June. And in the process of developing this, we have gone through a number of different conversations with our own internal staff as well as with the board. At this point in time, we have a summary presentation of the final adjustments to date. Dr. Battle, I wonder, did you want to give any statements before I got into the PowerPoint?
No, please proceed.
All right. So to begin then, I will go ahead and move over to the PowerPoint presentation and share that on your screen. So you should now be seeing the presentation with our slide title screen here, FY21 Final Budget Adjustments Report as of today. Tonight, we want to make sure that we cover where things stand. We want to talk about the results of our interactive model that we did use through our process and show you what those are and our next steps. So just to refresh everyone's memory, we did begin with certain goals laid out before us for developing the FY21 budget, the adopted budget. These were the goals that we identified. I won't read through those in detail, but I would like to point out the fact that throughout our conversations, throughout our discussions, we have been trying to keep these things at the forefront. We will talk a little further at the end or more towards the end of this discussion regarding the last bullet, which is submitting a balanced budget. So as we began our process, we first needed to determine what it is that we were going to use for our enrollment assumptions. And so you can see on this slide that we are presenting to you a budget that is built upon a 7,606 K-12 student count. And so based upon that enrollment, we determined our revenues we would anticipate from that, And from there, then we identified an initial projected deficit of $8.5 million. And these numbers are rounded. At that point in time, as we talked about with our general community, the fact was that we went into this entire school year knowing that we needed to approach our concerns related to our financial situation from a very multifaceted approach, that being the integrated action plan. Part of that integrated action plan was the voter approved levy. So you see that reflected here of an equivalent amount of $1.6 million. Additionally, we talked about the closing of facilities, and through that process, the board determined the closure of 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school for next year. And we calculated then the additional savings we would anticipate seeing, mostly personnel related, of $2.6 million. The next line indicates a right sizing based on enrollment. You'll see the details in just a couple minutes, but it totals up to about $1.3 million for purposes of right sizing. That means aligning our staffing ratios to the true enrollment that we're anticipating and projecting, that 7,606 for K-12. Beyond that, then there was quite a bit of conversation and discussion around various different areas, keeping in mind our goals, keeping in mind the strategic direction of the district, and identifying $1.74 million of additional adjustments and efficiencies. Some of this discussion went all the way up through this week on Tuesday evening. And so this is updated for that information, and that is what is being presented tonight. We have still, though, a remaining deficit of $1,260,000 projected. So given this, what we have attached here are 2 PDFs. And I just want to show this first one here. I'm going to try and make this a little larger for us. I think that's a little easier for the public to see as well. This is our 1-page summary. It's a very common slide that we show when talking about our general fund, and that's all we're talking about is our general fund here. So you see that there are a couple of columns related to the current year, the adopted and the revised budget, and you see a column for the previous school year that was audited, 18-19. On the far right, though, you do see a projected 2020-21 school year and a 2021-22 school year. And we are focusing on the second to the last column that reads the $14,204,411 for the total beginning fund balance, top row. With that number in play, we then calculated those revenues based upon that enrollment of 7,606, and then the expenditures. This expenditures number is a roll-up of all of the costs that we anticipate with certain percentage increases on a line item basis. And then applied to that was the list of budget adjustments that we will look at next. So this is reflective of after the fact of those budget adjustments, and shows then a resulting variance of revenues less expenditures, showing a negative $1,260,166. It does indicate a total ending fund balance of $12,944,245 is projected at the end of 2021 school year. It does use estimates, as you see below, breaking down our fund balance as to how much of that might be non-spendable, and that's an estimate based off of prior year audited figures. The restricted is an estimate based off from where we are beginning and where we anticipate we could spend those restricted funds first before unassigned. Same is true for committed, which reflects pretty much our carryovers and propay. And then the unassigned is reflective of those dollars which are not tied to anything in particular, but unassigned. The formula you see below of 6.87 is the percentage that is calculated for that unassigned fund balance that is projected for school year ending 2021. The other link on this particular slide is the final list of FY21 adjustments. And I just want to navigate here so that you can see as I go. So on this list of final adjustments, you will find that the format we've used is a reference number on the far left. The department is listed next with an item description, an estimate of the FTEs that are related to that particular line item, a yes or a no, N. Everything on this list should be yes as we look at this, as they have been gone through the process of being reviewed and a determination made as to whether it would be included. Next column is the total savings, or in some cases, if there's no brackets around it, it could be a cost, an added cost for what that adjustment reflects. And in the case where it is personnel, it is reflective of salaries and benefits. There is also an impact statement. As we go down, you'll see that. So I just want to point out the slide that we just spoke of with the groupings of the various dollar amounts, and we start with the $8.5 million deficit. You'll see that rows 1 through 13 all reflect those items related to the closing of the schools. Lines 14 and 15, they reflect the right sizing. And these above are colored blue, as the blue at the very bottom you can see indicates by our key that these are items decided by the board or considered part of our base. So these were board determined, as the closing of schools was board determined, and then the right sizing was agreed. We would move forward with that as part of our base. When we look at the green colored items, which range from numbers 16 all the way down through numbers 46, those the green reflects those recommendations from the leadership team, and items that are very detailed in nature that were determined at a level of management. As you can see from these, there's all yeses on these. Again, they are green only for that reason, and also reflect negatives being budget adjustments that will save dollars, whereas those without brackets, such as lines 41, 42, those do not show that. They are additions to our budget. And the last two lines I'd like to speak about are 50 and 56. These are blue again, as these were under board discussion the other evening, and were determined by the board as being indicated that that was a desire. As we take a look at these, you will see some missing reference numbers. I want to point out to the public, they are missing because there were line items that have been removed from our list from consideration. And so we hid those lines and do not show those. As you can see, all of these that are yeses then total up to the number that you see below, which is $5,669,913.86. That is the figure that has been reduced in order to come up to the total expenditures that you saw reflected on the previous slide in the summary format. As we move away from that detail and to the next slide, we did seek budget input as well from our public. And so there is a slide here where these are the two questions that were asked. What programming would you prioritize as the district works towards its mission? And secondly, what efficiency should the district explore? And linked here for the public and for your reference as board members is that summary response with the suggested priorities and then the number of different comments that may have been made regarding those themes. And then below that, the suggested efficiencies as well with those items that were and how many times they may have been mentioned or listed. Next, we have our continual budget review. So as we've gone through this process up to now, it's been quite a bit of work in developing the line items and determining the costs for the various different suggested positions and items. And as the board has provided guidance throughout this process on particular budget adjustments, the environment in which we function budgetarily will remain cautionary, given the many unknowns at this time and into the near future. So I would like to say that in our process, there are two commitments for sure that you will see us working on. That is to ensure quality instructional programs and students' supports. Secondly, to ensure that we align our expenditures to the revenue that is received. We are acknowledging that there are many unknowns at this time. To name just a few of them, COVID has reduced revenue streams for us. To what extent is yet to be determined, as we do not necessarily know the full amount of emergency funding that may come our way, whether it's through federal means or through state means. So at this point in time, we do recognize and know that with the closure of our buildings and the inability for us to continue to offer some of our spring sports or activities or rentals or community ed courses, all of that has had an impact on our revenue streams. Additionally, we acknowledge that an unknown for us at this moment is the enrollment for fall. We are estimating a figure. That amount may or may not be exactly what we see in the fall, and that's why it's an estimate. But it is something that we have to acknowledge now as being an unknown for sure. The other question we have at this time is our summer school. We're ready and waiting just to learn whether or not we'll be able to do summer school in person. Regardless, we are prepared to continue our distance learning with a summer school program, and we're working towards finalizing those plans as we speak. As we move forward, the leadership actions that you will see us taking in implementing the line item budget as we move forward and helping others to build their line item budget is that practice of carryover for site and department budgets. It's going to be limited. Some of the carryover items will no longer be dispersed, and instead we will be focusing more on each site and department is going to be asked to function within 98% of their allocation of budget and strictly adhere to those budget limits they see on their expenditure budgets as we build the FY21 budgets. There are cost-saving efficiencies that we are requesting of all employees, sites, and departments. This means sometimes it's just about the culture that we work within, right? It's about, are we thinking about what our true needs are and only those are what we're spending in our time focusing on? Or are we also looking at some of the wants? We're asking people to focus on those things that are of need at this time, as we are still striving for a balanced budget to the extent possible. A district-wide determination of how our public may assist our schools and our programs, we plan to develop and communicate well with our groups. This would mean our PTOs, our boosters, our families, any donor that might call and ask, how can we help? We want to be prepared with a complete list that makes sense for us district-wide, and so that the public and all of our staff all understand where it is that we're focusing our public attention toward, as well as what it is that we can then focus on otherwise. With all of that in play, and as we begin to implement this next year's adopted budget, once it's approved by the board in June, this is a report for the list of items that are on our cost reductions list, as well as what might be added in the next year. But as we move forward, the board will be taking a report on June 11th and receiving that report regarding what does that adopted budget look like for FY21, not just the general fund, but also for all of the funds, inclusive of food and nutrition, community education, capital, and debt. On June 18th, a week later, the board is scheduled then to approve that adopted budget for FY21. As per statute, a school board must approve the adopted budget for the next fiscal year by June 30th. This year is going to be a little bit more challenging in some ways, in the fact that we are also being asked to make sure that we are making any budget transfers also before the end of the fiscal year. So those budget transfer requests would also be presented to you in June for your consideration. And the only reason we would find ourselves doing that this year would be around the COVID impact. And so we are working to try and track and monitor our current, in some cases there's savings, and in some cases there's additional costs. In the end, we need to determine exactly how much is eligible then for that budget transfer and then make that request for board approval then in June. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I hope that our community and our audience by now realizes that this is a very lengthy process, this budget process, and we started back in December and have had multiple meetings. So a lot of time and a lot of work has gone into reaching this final report. So thank you, Lisa, and thank you, staff, for your help with that. I will open it up to board members for questions and comments.
There we go.
Director Schatz?
No, that was me, Eric. Or did you raise your hand?
I
Eric?
raised my hand.
Oh, you officially raised your hand. All right, I will.
I just want to echo what Gerald expressed, and express my thanks to Lisa and the whole staff. It is a complicated, difficult process, and my thanks to them for helping us make the best decisions that we can for the district.
Thank you. Director Miller?
Yeah, the same. Thank you to Teresa, Lisa, and the rest of your administrative crew for the work you guys have put in, the attention to detail and the tolerance of our questions and time, the timing involved. I appreciate all that. To the general public, I think it's important to understand that, we say this all the time, it's school finances are very complicated. They don't run the normal gambit of what you would consider normal financing. And as such, I can recognize when someone on the surface looks at this and sees that we're proposing a budget deficit of $1.2 million next year, that on the surface that looks unusual. But it's important to understand that we have funds, we have reserve and unreserved funds. For lack of better phrasing, call them savings accounts or checking accounts. And we are making a conscious decision to utilize some of that in a effective manner. And ironically, actually going to end up with those funds staying strong afterwards. But this is in light of the environment that we find ourselves in with the closure of schools, the desire to not strip this district of all the benefits that make it the best district around. So we're casting a wide and far-reaching balance here, and I think it's important that people understand this is a very conservative and tight budget that we're doing. If you look back at and you don't need to bring it up, Lisa, but if the viewership was to page back a little bit on the feed, you'll see that when you showed the spreadsheet, we're actually spending less this year than we spent last year. So, again, it's important people understand this is not a reckless budget, even though we are proposing a deficit. It's the best we can do given the circumstances. We would love to keep everything that we're cutting. I think everybody knows that. And the best thing anybody can do to change this is to get hold of their local legislator and let them know they need to spend more on public education. We can only pay for things with the money that comes down from St. Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Miller. Any other comments, board members? Okay, I will wrap it up then and dovetail Director Miller's comments that it is a conservative budget, and we recognize that this is the work that we needed to do to keep ourselves whole. At the same time, I have to acknowledge that we are going to lose some very talented and caring staff and teachers as a result of this process. And that is not something that any one of us takes lightly. I think I can speak for all of us on that, these are very hard times, and we'd prefer not to have to make those cuts. I think also Lisa alluded to this in one of the final slides, that we are looking at a culture shift in terms of expectations that we will live, that all of us, each of us, will live below our budget. And that's very important. We're all in this together, and we all need to mind our, pennies, nickels, and dimes to make sure that we come in as close to budget as possible. And that means thinking about the needs versus the wants. Lisa, I liked how you had put that. So with that, I will wrap us up and we will move on to the next topic. Thank you very much, Lisa. Next, I don't believe that Yoda Heat joined us this evening. Let me look to see. Nope. Okay. So we will be missing our student representative, and hopefully she'll be able to join us at our next meeting. I will turn next to Dr. Battle, and we will receive the superintendent's report. Dr. Battle.
Thank you, Board Chair Alt and members of the board. I just have one topic for tonight. Getting a little feedback. I just have one topic for tonight, and I don't think you'll be surprised about what that topic is. The last time I gave a superintendent's report to the board, it was March 12th. I simply let you know at that time that the Minnesota Department of Health was not recommending that schools close to students. It's been less than a month, but it feels like a year has passed. We are living in a different world than we were 4 weeks ago. First and foremost, I want to say how incredibly proud I am of the 191 team. When Governor Walz ordered schools to close and called for all hands on deck to provide learning, meals, and childcare, our staff members responded with passion, creativity, selflessness, and determination to find a way to make it happen. The challenge put before us was and is great. How do you provide childcare and maintain social distances practices? How do you prepare materials and deliver them through car windows and in neighborhoods when you don't even know how many meals you will need? How do you create and launch a whole new model of distance learning in under 2 weeks? Our district saw this challenge as an opportunity to make a positive difference in the lives of our students and in our community. We didn't just sit and worry about what we didn't know or focus on what couldn't be done. We made the path to what could be done. I've been part of this community for just over 9 months, and I've learned that's what it means when we say we are 191. We look forward, we find a way, we do it together. All of that said, we must acknowledge that this may be a traumatic experience for our community, for our students, families, and staff. We still have barriers to overcome, and even when we do, people will be changed. I want to encourage every one of our families and all of our staff to be mindful of their own needs, especially their mental health. There are resources available on our public website for families, whether it's accessing financial support or physical and mental health support, and staff members can access our employee assistance program, and that information is on Staff Central. I want all of you to know that we can be proud of how we've responded to this crisis. We must also continue to be vigilant, to care for each other, and to live our values. Based on what I've seen, I'm confident we will. Thank you, 191 community. And I'd also like to give a special thanks to board members for your guidance, your support, and your patience as staff figured out this whole new world. But we are committed to making sure we continue to educate our students, to support our communities, especially for our healthcare workers and first responders as we care for their children to get through this crisis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. I'll open it up to board members for Just clarify for individual board member reports. At our next meeting, we'll take committee reports. Any hands for that? Director Courier.
Hopefully I can do this. Thank you, Chair Alt. I have a colleague who lives in Oregon, and I've been chatting with her. She's a teacher in a district there. She teaches secondary English. And of course, they're not attending school as well. And it was a good conversation for me as I did a retrospective on the decisions we've made as a board over time to provide Chromebooks and to provide technology, passing the technology budget or levy to provide our students with tools that made this happen for our students, to make it possible for our teachers and our students to continue with their learning. As I listened to her story and I was comparing notes, and I thought, this is incredible what we've done for our students here. So she was telling me that some of the things that they were going to have to do, mostly review rather than moving forward with the curriculum. And for kids who are looking to go to college or to finish a term paper or those kinds of things, that wasn't very good. So I'm proud of our district and some of the decisions we've made in the past. So I just wanted to comment on that I think we've done some things in the past that are serving us well right now. So thank you, Gerald.
Thank you very much, Dr. Courier. Board members, any other comments or reports? Okay, I do have one thing to add, and it ties directly back to Dr. Battle's statement about being proud of our response to this crisis, and actually Director Courier to yours as well. Just wanting to let people know that as a community, we are really pulling together and trying to figure out how we can support one another. And so pleased to be able to share that there will be a Burnsville Leaders Forum on Monday, April 13th at 1 p.m. That's this coming Monday at 1 p.m. And members of City of Burnsville Council and staff, representatives from 191, and we'll meet together with our Burnsville Chamber members. This is actually being led by the Burnsville Chamber. And so since it will be live streamed on Facebook, it'll be a COVID-19 update, just to highlight really how our community continues to be strong, continues to come together, and behind the scenes working to make sure that that we are all hitting our stride together. So please join us on Monday at 1 p.m. Next, turning to the business portion of our meeting, we're being asked to approve the consent agenda. Although board action is required, it generally is unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. In the event that a board member wishes to discuss an item, that item will be moved for separate consideration. Is there anything that a board member would like to move for separate consideration? All right, with that, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Director Schatz, second. Seconded by Director Courier. Ms. Kenny, would you please call the vote?
Scott Hume,
Aye.
Eric Miller,
Aye.
Abigail Alt,
Aye.
Jen Hallwigger,
Aye.
Leslie Chester,
Aye.
Darcy Schatz,
Aye.
Dee Dee Courier.
Aye.
And it passes. Thank you. Next, we'll start our new business discussion with Stephanie White, Director of Student Support Services. We are being asked to approve 2020 to 2021 ECSE Birth to 3 program and evaluation team calendar. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Chair Alt. Good evening, board, and good evening, Dr. Battle. I'm here to bring forth the stretch calendar of our Birth to 3 team. This is a calendar that we do separate for this team of folks as the early interventionists, and they, as they do their work with young families, birth to age 3. We stretch that out over the whole year to make sure that we are responsive to the needs of the young when they arise. We know early intervening is very important, and so you can't take a break in the summer or in different parts of the year. And so we develop a separate work calendar for them in order to respond to that particular age of students and families. I can't hear you, Abigail.
Gerald, I think you're muted.
Got it. Sorry, I couldn't tell if Stephanie, if there was buffering or if and you were still speaking or
Nope.
if you had stopped. So with that, we have a recommendation. I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Director Hume, seconded by Director Miller. I'll open it up for questions and comments. Hearing none. Ms. Kenny, would you please call the roll?
Eric Miller,
Aye.
Abigail Alt,
Aye.
Jen Hallwigger,
Aye.
Leslie Chester,
Aye.
Darcy Schatz,
Aye.
Dee Dee Courier,
Aye.
Scott Hume.
Aye.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Next, we will stay with Stephanie White. We are being asked to approve on a first reading basis changes to policy 516, student medication.
Okay. This policy is up for revision, and we're recommending that we adopt an addition towards the end of the policy that talks about sunscreen. And so student medication used to require any sunscreen would come with a doctor's note, but as our knowledge around the need for sunscreen and making sure that kids are safe when they are playing outside in our facilities, we have all evolved as a society to value sunscreen, and parents are really good at teaching their children how to use it, right? And so MSB has given us a policy to add some words so that parents are free to send sunscreen with their children to school in backpacks or keep it in their lockers or whatever without having to go through the health offices in our buildings. And so I recommend that we adopt the suggestion from MSBA.
Great. Thank you very much. I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Director Chester, second.
Second. Second.
Seconded by Director Hume. Any questions? Director Courier, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Was there any discussion in the committee about saying that the sunscreen product had to be commercial, or rather than like a homemade product or something like that?
There was not that discussion, but with the licensed nurses, they felt pretty strongly that this was a really great recommendation for our students. And their discussion really revolved around making sure that kids are learning how to take care of themselves in the sun as well, and that the option of having kids potentially burn their skin is much, much worse than using sunscreen. And so even if it was lotion or wasn't as strong, they would work or support the parents with those conversations if they felt that an individual student needed a conversation around what they were using, or if it wasn't strong enough or whatever. But they felt that this was a very positive step forward in teaching students self-care in the area.
So the nurses felt that this was strong enough language that they would use the correct
Yes.
product. Okay,
Yes.
thank
Yep.
you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Ms. Kenny, would you please call the roll?
All right. Abigail Alt,
Aye.
Jen Hallwiger,
Aye.
Leslie Chester,
Aye.
Darcy Schatz,
Aye.
Dee Dee Courier,
Aye.
Scott Hume,
Aye.
Eric Miller.
Aye.
Thank you. And the recommendation passes. Thank you, Stephanie. Next, we are being asked to approve on a first reading basis changes to policy 802, disposition of obsolete equipment and material. And I believe this one goes to Lisa Ryder.
Thank you, Chair Alt. This evening, we have a policy brought to you with some MSBA, Minnesota School Board Association, statutory changes that were recommended, and the Policy Review Committee on March 10th reviewed these. As you take a look at the policy itself, everything's pretty much the same as it has been until you reach letter H, at which point then it's basically including tablet devices, doing some renumbering, and then it's giving an option, it's adding an option for us to be able to expand the potential recipients of surplus school computers. The option that's being added is for the school board, upon board resolution, to create the option to sell or give surplus school computers to qualifying students. So that's new and different, and something that I think gives the local school board opportunities then to address whatever needs they may feel they have in their community, aside from the other options that in the past have been available when it comes to dealing with equipment that is considered obsolete. So at this point, the recommendation is for the board to approve on a first reading basis changes to policy 802, disposition of obsolete equipment and material.
Thank you, Lisa. I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Director Chester, second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Schatz. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Kenny, would you please call the roll?
Jen Hallwiger,
Aye.
Leslie Chester,
Aye.
Darcy Schatz,
Aye.
Dee Dee Courier,
Aye.
Scott Hume,
Aye.
Eric Miller,
Aye.
Abigail Alt.
Aye. And the recommendation passes. Thank you. With that, we will now adjourn to a board workshop where we will receive information on health and dental insurance and the renewal of those. So I will declare us now adjourned, and we will move straight into the workshop with Stacy Sovine, Executive Director of Human Resources. Welcome, Stacy.
Good evening, Chair Alt, Dr. Battle, members of the board. I also want to introduce Chase Ambrosia from One Digital. He has been our consultant and our support with our self-funded plan now 5 years, 6 years. It's been
Going on 7.
Going on 7. Time flies. So, and just want to bring to you tonight, typically every year we bring to you in the form of a workshop the information on our self-funded plans, so that that's the time in which we can ask questions, review it, and during our next board meeting, we'll bring the proposals for the rate increases, so that starting in May, we can do our open enrollment, have everything processed, so that when our new plan goes into effect on July 1, we're all set and ready to go. So that's kind of our normal process through the year. I want to start off by saying that our self-funded plans are both healthy, our medical as well as our dental. We're in good shape with those. This year, currently year to date, we are spending down our medical reserve by about $624,000. Part of that is a major increase in procedures in March. And I think some of that may be related to the COVID virus that we're seeing, that if folks were looking at elective procedures, they were trying to get them done ahead of potential shutdowns. So we saw that not only in the spike in our monthly claims of close to $400,000, we also saw that in our stop loss consideration. So that's when you look and you see that there's 80% for the aggregate, which was kind of a 9% increase since January. We're looking at those high-end expenses, $100,000 plus. And currently we have 9 of those, with one of them exceeding $225,000. Whenever one of the costs exceeds $225,000, that's where our stop loss insurance kicks in, okay? So for a self-funded plan, we're not in this by ourselves. We do have a backstop. So anything that goes over $225,000, an insurance provider kicks in and helps support that going forward. Okay. So we're spending down, but the next 3 months, because folks aren't going to have the opportunity to probably do elective surgeries or some of these other type of high-end expenses, that may start kind of coming back into balance with what we're expecting. So this year also was the 3rd year in which we had to go out for bids for our stop loss, our third-party administration liability piece with that. And we received bids back, and overall the increase is going to be about 1.48%, okay? So what that averages out is just a little over $22 per employee per month is what that'll end up looking like. Again, part of this is I don't have the staff that process all the insurance claims. We use Preferred One. So regardless of where folks go out for their insurance, their doctors, networks, Preferred One then processes all those bills, make sure that they get paid appropriately. They help us manage the money going in and out really, going out from the district, but they take care of all of that for us. So they have a fee for that. They also help with the stop loss that, as I was referring to, anything over $225,000. Overall, it's a good bid from them. They've been our partner now for a number of years, and we're looking forward to moving with them going forward. We do have a price lock-in for the admin fee of $43 for the next 3 years, as well as a wellness credit, which we use to help for our employees in their program for wellness, just bio scans in the fall, flu shots, those types of things that are help supported through this plan. And then also we'll have a 25% rate cap for stop loss for this renewal. Now moving into the actual medical renewal. So last year we ended up taking a 3.5% increase on our medical rates. And at the time, I believe that it was recommended, it was somewhere between 5.5%, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that area. And we were already having some of those budget reduction conversations last year. And if you recall, we said, okay, the projection model is so that even in the worst of the year, we're still going to be able to add to our reserve. You know, we're not going to have to go in. So last year we made the step saying, let's go down to 3.5%, understanding we may have to dip into our reserve. We're not going to have the same amount of padding that even on the worst case scenario year, we're in pretty good shape. We should be fine. And as it is right now, we're spending down about $624,000. But like I said, we hope for a little bit of a bounce back for the last 3 months. So we did get a little bit closer by going under what was suggested, but that's the reason why you build up a reserve, is so that on the bad years or the rainy years, you can go back and you can dip into that, so that we're leveling our fees over the year, our increases, instead of having 10% increases one year and another year down to 3 and back and forth. Trying to make it more stable, more manageable, predictable over time. This year, we would be looking at a 4.23% increase. And that's the one lens of looking at it. Kind of like what Lisa and I do with a number of our different staffing and budget numbers, we have different perspectives, different ways in which we come at it. The second piece is looking at what our 5-year trend has been, excuse me, for the last 5 years, and what would that percentage look like? Well, the last 5 years, our percentage increase has been roughly around 6.8% for claims, okay? So that number would be like a 7.66% increase to our plan. Again, we have a very healthy plan. We're spending it down this year a little bit at the moment. And given all of our budget reductions, I wouldn't want to recommend this for multiple years, but we do think that we could increase our fees, our premium cost by 2.75% instead of the 4.23%. We still anticipate that we'll probably spend down our reserve, but not to the level that it's going to put us in any type of risk or jeopardy. Next spring, we'll reevaluate how things went. And if it continues to decline, at that point, we'll probably have to start pumping the brakes and start rebuilding it. Because again, we don't want to deplete our medical reserve, because the backstop for the medical reserve is our general fund. And I don't want to have to go there. You know, we want to keep that part healthy, but we also don't need to deplete our general fund over ambitiously when we can take care of, you know, just how we control our premium rates. So if we went with the 2.75% increase, that'd be about $22.35 increase to our single plan, and about $57, a little more than $57 to our family plan. That would be the increase that we would be looking at per month for next year. Okay. Any questions on the medical? I'm flying by at 15,000 because insurance can get into the numbers very, very quickly. And so I'm trying to keep above all of the peaks, but if you have questions, that's why Chase is here. So.
Questions, anybody? I guess, Stacy, I do have one, and I'll give board members a moment or two to see if anything else bubbles up for them. Just to be clear, while you could be recommending a 4.23% increase on premiums, you actually we're actually hearing a recommendation to increase by only 2.75%, and that's basically a calculated guesstimate of what we believe will happen over the next year or so.
Yeah, The best visual that I have is during hurricane season, you see that cone of expected landfall. And, you know, they feel that it's going to hit somewhere probably close to the middle, but they give themselves a little bit of margin, either north or south of it. And the percentages for insurance, I feel, are very similar. That number that is provided is kind of towards the middle. There's a little bit of buffer on both sides, but that buffer on both sides still is to protect the plan to be able to add money to the reserve on the worst case. Well, we're moving that center line out. We're reducing our margin of error is really what this comes down to. Understanding that if the plan doesn't come in as expected, we may have to spend down our fund reserve for this to offset it. You know, it's still a decent number, it's still a safe number, but it just doesn't have the same margin of error that 4.23% would.
Thank you, that helps. Board members, any other questions? Okay. Well, I know we have some more information to dig into, and thank you, Chase. Always good to see you. Glad that you could join us. And Stacy, thanks as always. Board members, any questions that come up between? Yes,
I'm not done yet.
You're not done. I'm sorry.
That was just the medical.
Okay, sorry.
We got two more things. We have our dental, which is also self-funded. Our dental plan is the little engine that could. It just seems to kind of plug along every year. Doesn't need a lot of maintenance to it, and it sits right around between 0 and 1% as far as probably the amount that needs to be contributed to it. Quite frankly, we need to educate our staff a little bit more, because staff are not taking advantage of their preventative care nearly as much as they should. We can go twice a year for checkups, and that is not utilized by a large portion of staff. And that's one of the reasons, while that's costed into our liability, it isn't one of the things in which we're seeing occurring. So that's one of the reasons why the plan stays fairly stable over time. I'm looking at a 1% increase, just a minimal flat increase in that area as well. Finally, the last thing is, we also went out to renew our bids for life and long-term disability. And part of that has been one of our conversations through our negotiations process to change our language and our agreements to allow us to explore other options for long-term disability. Our plan kicks in after 30 days of eligibility before LTD kicks in. That's a pretty rich plan. But we weren't able to implement with a new company yet at this time, or a low bid on that, because I still have 3 contracts that are open, one to be ratified yet as well. So what we did is we went out, then we came back to Hartford, who is our current provider, and said, can you provide us a 2-year extension with us staying with you? And because that'll get us through this round of negotiations, a 2-year extension. And since all of these other bids were coming in lower than yours as well, can you do anything about that? And we will stay with Hartford for our disability and life insurance, but we're also going to be spending $28,000 less to do so. So we were able to leverage our plan in the long run and get a reduced rate for that. So our rates in those areas will be declining. And I'm really excited if we get the language that we're looking for in all of our contracts. When we do go out again in 2 years, I believe we'll be able to, maybe we won't even have to change our plan, but we will definitely be able to even leverage it for even more reductions in our cost.
That's the goal.
That is the goal. That's the wrap up of our self-funded plans and our health insurance as a whole.
Great. And I see that Director Miller has a question.
Yes, thank you. This is for Chase. Chase, thank you again for spending your evening with us. Stacy, you mentioned the dental is not being utilized as much as we'd like to see it on the preventive side. I've personally been in a circumstances where there was actually like a $50 a year penalty on the medical side if you didn't utilize the dental. Is that, there's something like that that we might be able to deploy, or something incentive wise like that that's available?
Certainly there could be an incentive measure to encourage people to go in. In terms of a penalty, that would probably be difficult to put in place as far as, being considered an aggregate value change and potentially a cost or increase in cost to employees. But employees know where things are at and who's going and who's not going in terms of the employee demographic, as well as the dependent demographic based on, what we've reviewed with the insurance committee. And we continue to promote and highlight, but it's a common theme, not just with, Burnsville schools, other districts, it's across the board. And some people just having a fear to go into the dentist, or just, not wanting to because they think they're young and invincible. But what we've seen is that your oral health leads to your overall health. And so we want to continue to promote so that people can correlate those two and get the best of both great benefits that the district is providing to them.
All right, yeah, I would just encourage creative thinking if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Miller. Director Courier, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, and it may have already been answered. Do we still have an insurance committee functioning?
It's expanded to a benefits committee.
Okay,
And they just met tonight, and they meet monthly with Chase and Tiffany and Robin that facilitate this committee.
good.
So they actually do go into the numbers every month. They do the deep dive so that they're aware of, how this all plays out.
Does it have a person from every building?
Not every building, but every unit.
Okay. You might consider having someone from every building because that's so informative. But I know every unit, when I think back, I was the principal's person way back when. But then at least you have an informed person. But if it may help that dental use if you had someone in every building.
Yeah, it is our ongoing struggle, that communication out from what the committee knows to to its members as a whole, encouraging folks. Sometimes it's a struggle just to get people that want to serve on the committee as well.
I know. Okay, thanks.
One of the best avenues too is with your new hires, bringing into the district and educating them on the benefits right out the gate and how they can take advantage of it. And that seems to be, something that HR has definitely been doing more so the last couple of years to get these new hires off to a good start and understand the value of the benefit with the HRA dollars and how they can take advantage of the medical plan. So we've definitely had an ongoing effort, really the last 5-6 years to help people understand what a great benefit they're being provided to, but also how they can take advantage of it, whether they're a short-term employee with the district or end up working there, 20, 30 years, their entire career.
Indeed.
Board members, any other questions? All right. Stacy or Chase, anything else that you wanted to share?
No, with that, we will bring back the recommendation at our next board meeting.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Great conversation, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.